Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're doing amazing. We have units of history, Carthaginian war elephants. Uh, I've always been fond of these elephants because they're such a tactical nightmare for the ancient world, especially the Romans. Early on, maybe not later on, when they understood how to use them or basically defend against these things, but they have riddled the Levant and the Mediterranean and obviously Africa for the longest times. And that's not even talking about India and what they use their Azaic elephants for. Obviously, this right here is an African elephant. Well, let's jump right into it.
Animal. Elephants are the largest land animals on the planet.
They go to like 16,000 pounds.
Twice as tall as a man and weighing 60 times as much. They are giant manifestations of nature's power. As with fire, however, it wouldn't be long before humans sought to tame this raw force. The end result is that as early as the first millennium BC, these animals were forged into tools of war, and by the time of antiquity would become the most feared weapons on the battlefield. This is especially true in the West, when we turn to the region of North Africa. Today,
yeah, and we're talking about a specific subspecies of the African elephant, the North African elephant, which was slightly smaller, I think, than your African bush elephant.
let us explore the famed war elephants of Carthage.
Okay, so specifically Carthage. Okay, Carthage is crazy, right? You got war elephants, you got Numidian cavalry, but how do you lose? How do you lose?
This video was sponsored by Magellan TV. They're an awesome space history in Greece. The Amazon Fire TV theatre performances. Magellan TV and Carthaginian Empire founded /Invicta.
Here we go.
Carthage was founded in 814 BC as a Phoenician colony in North Africa. It inherited much from its mother city, becoming a formidable trade and naval power. However,
yeah, look at that spot, by the way. Geologically speaking, I am just not smart this morning. Geographically speaking, just one of probably the most strategic places in the Mediterranean right here.
This did not include a strong tradition of land warfare or a familiarity with elephants. Over time, though, as the Carthaginian Empire expanded, so too did its military. This evolution mainly involved augmenting or outright replacing its native troops with auxiliary or mercenary forces. Doing so allowed the Punic army to leverage the military expertise of many nations whilst shielding the Punic citizenry from military losses. In this way, the Carthaginians were able to fight dozens of wars of expansion, which won them a vast empire. We should note that all of this took place in the first 500 years of its history without the use of the famed war elephants. These mighty animals first entered the picture in the late 3rd century BC during the campaigns of Pyrrhus of Epirus. The ambitious general had come to defend the Greeks in the west and had brought with him not just a crack army, but also 20 war elephants. They were first used against the Romans in Italy and then the Carthaginians in Sicily. Despite their relatively limited killing power, the elephants made quite a psychological impression on the battlefield and were shown to be a promising X-factor. In fact, their use was quickly spreading across the Mediterranean. This was largely as a result of Alexander the Great's campaigns in the east and the escalating warfare between his successors.
I just don't know enough about Alexander the Great, I guess, because I don't remember too many times he used elephants. I'm sure he did. I'm sure I'm just missing it in my recollection.
Carthage did not want to be left behind in the arms race, and now seems to have joined the trend. To do so, it likely would have imported elephants and specialists from India through the intermediaries of Egypt and Syria. These were Asian elephants, Elephas maximus, which stood roughly 3 meters tall at the shoulder and weighed almost 4 tons. They had a long history of warfare in the East and were highly prized possessions. While Carthage was certainly quite wealthy and capable of buying them in significant quantities, it proved far more economical to source their pachyderms closer to home.
Yeah, I mean, one thing with the elephants though, like you have to train these things and you have to have like a good bond between, and it's a very different, obviously, depending on the age you start training an elephant. You have to create a bond between the trainer and the elephant itself, and then from there you have to go through this rigorous training of months and months, sometimes years, of just, you know, tactical like awareness and like being able to control the beast. And how, because when the pilas start flying, what do you do?
As a result, they turned to the exploitation of native African elephants. In these matters, they would
Much bigger is what you'll see here, much bigger creatures.
have had the choice between two options: the savanna elephants, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephants, Loxodonta cyclotis.
Yeah, big distinction. There's also the African bush elephant that's probably slightly bigger than the savanna one.
The former stood 4 meters tall at the shoulder and weighed 5 tons, while the latter stood only 2.7 meters tall at the shoulder and weighed 3 tons. Taming the savanna species would have meant taming the largest terrestrial animal on the planet.
It's a dinosaur, really.
However, even the skilled Indian trainers were not up to the task. As a result, Carthage was left to capture the more diminutive
And that's interesting because I didn't realize they were that small comparatively.
forest elephants. These were more widespread than today and could have been acquired from the surrounding lands of Libya, Numidia, and Mauritania. The specific method for recruiting and training them is unknown. However, it is likely that such activities were similar to those practiced in India. In this case, wild elephants would be captured by herding them into corrals with fire, loud noises, or females. The newly caught animals would then be tied to a post amongst already tamed elephants to lose their aggression by example.
Herd immunity, but not immunity, but herd pacification.
If they continued to defy trainers, they might be beaten or starved. Once submissive, elephants would then be accustomed to the sights, sounds, and smells of battle.
Yeah, and of course, this is a dirty business. This is not going to be good for the animal. The animal did not prosper because of this. It did not get anything out of this. Likewise, to like most horses in this era, they're what do you call it? Can't even think of the word. They're collateral.
Handlers would also teach them how to answer commands, how to maneuver, and even how to kill. This arduous process would be repeated for every war elephant, as it proved prohibitively difficult to breed and raise the animals in captivity, given their long reproductive cycle and huge resource demands.
Huge gestation period.
But despite these hurdles, Carthage committed itself to the task, and within a decade had formed its very own elephant corps. Our earliest record of their use was during the First Punic War. While initially employed quite clumsily,
Well, Pyrrhus that had elephants prior to that. Not sure where he got his elephants, but he definitely introduced them into the region prior to that.
they eventually proved to be effective tools and became a staple of the Carthaginian military. Such was the North African Empire's commitment to this new weapon system that their capital was supposedly equipped with stables to house up to 300 elephants at a time.
Dang.
If these were full then at its peak, Carthage would have boasted the largest force of war elephants in the Mediterranean. An elephant in and of itself is a terrifying creature to be facing on the battlefield. Their massive size, weight, and strength mean they can inflict significant damage against individuals and groups of soldiers. We have records of them trampling men under their feet, goring troops with their tusks, and even picking up and smashing cavalry with their trunks. But as war elephants, they would have been equipped with gear to make them even more powerful. Defensively, this often meant layering on protection. This might be something as simple as a cloak to offer padding, catch missiles, and
Is that like a I'm looking on the left. Is that a I don't know. Would you want to cover your tusk?
make the elephant look more intimidating. Other times, though, this might be upgraded to actual armor. For instance, vulnerable areas like the legs, neck, and trunk could be wrapped in flexible laminar bands of leather or metal. Larger swathes of the elephant's body could be protected by sheets of scale armor.
Yeah, that looks crazy. That looks like a dinosaur.
In some cases, we even have records of the elephants being outfitted with specialized helmets. Often these included a top plate and a frill of feathers to protect the mahout.
Like, how do you attack that? Like the only way is underneath, and you can't go underneath unless you're close. That is hard. That is a very hard thing to kill.
In terms of offense, this mostly came in the form of human riders. A driver always sat on the elephant's neck, but their job was largely restricted to controlling the elephant. Instead, killing power came from additional crew who joined them on the elephant's back, wielding close-range weapons like a lance or long-range weapons like a javelin or bow.
And I've seen most of the times they'll be like in a bucket instead of like just riding.
War elephants could hold about 3 of these. The larger elephants might support more weight, but given the limited space available, they would instead be equipped with a tower. Such howdahs measured about 1 by 2 meters and were secured on the elephant's back by way of ropes and chains. Made of wood and adorned with
I mean, I guess that's stable. I don't know.
additional armor, they served as robust weapons platforms. A fully equipped war elephant was thus a fearsome instrument of war. However, we should note that not all animals were armed to the maximum extent. In fact, many ancient depictions of war elephants show them virtually bare. But why? Well, for one, specialized gear could be hard to procure and maintain. It also imposed restrictions on mobility. Thus, a commander might opt to use stripped-down war elephants who were perfectly capable of getting the job done with their own natural advantages.
Yeah, like those knees and that trunk.
Additionally, there would be limitations imposed by the type of elephant in question. For example, the African forest elephant was on average smaller than its Indian counterpart, and thus less suitable for bearing the burdens of heavy gear like a tower. While scholarly debate still surrounds the question of whether standard Punic war elephants carried high-tier equipment like howdahs, it is very likely that Carthage was capable of fielding elephants, which could when the need arose. Clearly, elephants are strong and powerful, but how do you use them in battle?
It's like they're like chariots from what I can see, like in terms of the mobility.
This was something of a dilemma that was solved through experimentation on the battlefield. Rather than deal with individual cases, we can look broadly at the 2 most common practices. In terms of deployment, there were 2 principal formations. The first involved placing war elephants front and center, with a massed line of anywhere from 20 to over 100 beasts.
And you really see that start to take off at the end of the First Punic War. And the other formation where you put them behind your line we see that a lot in the early parts of the Punic War.
The second involved placing them on one or both flanks.
Oh, never mind.
In either case, the elephant units were placed ahead of the main body of heavy infantry or cavalry. Within the elephant unit, animals were spaced out 15 to 20 meters in 1 or 2 lines. Between them were placed supporting light infantry detachments. According to Diodorus, 50 men per elephant was fairly standard in the Mediterranean. These troops would be tasked with softening up enemy formations and keeping them from getting at the vulnerable underbellies and legs of the elephants. Now that we've covered deployment, let's move on to combat.
The most important thing.
This almost exclusively involved taking the offense in the form of a massive charge.
It's also psychological at the same time.
The commander would usually order this attack at the start of the battle, with the war elephants thundering across the field towards the enemy like battering rams. For those on the receiving end, this must have been a terrifying sight. Loose, poorly trained troops often broke before first contact, while horses, unaccustomed to the strange sight.
I mean, come on, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? I mean, you'd have to be really courageous to stand up against something like this.
Sights, sounds, and smalls were known to bolt in panic. Strong forces like a phalanx were far more likely to hold their ground. Yet cohesion alone would not protect them, as might be the case against cavalry. Elephants and their support team were more than capable of literally ripping apart formations.
Yeah, think about it. So you got to be in the defensive maneuver because, you know, you don't want to die. Then at the same time, you got a 10,000-pound animal, depending on what animal we're working with, probably like 6 to 10,000. Then you got arrows and like javelins and everything being thrown at you at the same time.
Here are a couple of incredible descriptions from ancient historians. Where the creatures joined the fighting, some perished underfoot, trampled down together with their armor. Others were encompassed with their trunks and flung down against the ground. People died a terrible death. Many breathed their last, pierced through with elephants' tusks. It was especially terrifying to see the elephants seizing armed men with their trunks and passing them overhead to the drivers who slayed them like captured game.
It's like fishing. It's like fishing with a trunk.
The action was unlike any of previous contests, for wherever the beasts could wheel round, they rushed forth against the ranks of the infantry and demolished the phalanx of the Macedonians, dense as it was.
The Macedonians.
Truly, war elephants were a force to be reckoned with. However, they were by no means unstoppable. They were animals, after all, never fully under control, even in the best of circumstances.
Yeah, a lot of times they would actually do more damage than good.
And prone to running amok amongst their own lines.
Yeah.
In addition,
they don't know.
Many militaries eventually devised effective countermeasures to fighting them. But that
Letting them through like chariots.
discussion will have to wait for another time. Let us now turn to the service history of the Carthaginian war elephants. According to our records, their
Sicily.
earliest deployment was in 262 BC at the Battle of Agrigentum, during the opening stages of the First Punic War.
Right, the battle for Sicily, actually. Yeah.
Here, the Carthaginians were only beginning to master this new arm of warfare, apparently deploying their 60 elephants in the second battle line.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
They would pay the price for this hesitancy when the retreating front line spooked the elephants, causing them to panic and trample the rest of the army, leading to its swift disintegration.
Who knows what would have happened if they brought him to the front line?
Following this humiliating defeat, the Carthaginian Elephant Corps was put on a tight leash. It would only see use again 6 years later when the Roman consul Regulus launched an invasion in North Africa. This time, nearly 100 elephants were deployed in a massive line at the front. Their charge struck the Romans like a mighty hammer, while cavalry swept around the side and flanks to finish the job.
Now, this battle particularly, elephants really, it was a great opening. But the cavalry and the infantry supporting that did an amazing job as well.
For years, surviving legionaries would tell horror stories of that traumatizing defeat. The Carthaginians had regained confidence in their elephants and now sent them back to Sicily.
This was a turning point in the war, by the way. Like, it was very close. They were going to march on Carthage any day at this point. So this was a big turning point for the defensive side.
In response, the Romans avoided pitched battle at all costs. However, in 251 BC,
I don't know about that. They had a lot of logistical issues with the Navy, and they still had to lock down Sicily. I mean, and they, prior to that, Carthage wasn't sending war elephants to Sicily, so I don't think that was the reason.
The legions would use a ruse outside of Bonormus to draw the feared beasts into an ambush beneath the city walls. Thus we see that throughout the First Punic War, elephants would rack up a mixed record of wins and losses. Shortly after concluding its conflict with Rome, the Carthaginians were embroiled in a bitter internal struggle known as the Mercenary War.
Right, which we really haven't reacted to, so we got to do that one soon.
Once again, the Punic army would turn to elephants for a miracle. Thankfully, they would deliver in the final climactic battle when the general Hamilcar Barca managed to use them to shatter a rebel army twice his size. From this low point, Carthage would bounce back to reassert itself as a powerful empire. War elephants were used in the following campaigns to resecure North Africa and in the Barcid conquest of Spain. It's from here that they would be roped into Hannibal's bold plans to invade Rome during the Second Punic War. Famously, 27 of these elephants would brave the Alps and make it into the first battle with the Romans at the River Trebia.
Craziest story I've ever heard still.
While they played their part in achieving victory, the presence of the elephants would be short-lived when all but one perished in the following weeks. Elephants would continue to pop up over the course of the Second
I wonder how many of them died actually of hypothermia.
Punic War. They again appear to have had mixed results and largely take a back seat in the narrative of battles as compared to the more decisive moves of cavalry forces. However, they would once again be placed front and center of the action at the epic battle of Zama between
Scipio Africanus and of course Hannibal.
Hannibal and Scipio.
And this is where they actually let the elephants through. They were very ineffective.
Here, 80 war elephants were unleashed on the Roman lines. In response, the legions brilliantly neutralized their charge by opening up lanes, blowing loud horns, and attacking from all sides with skirmishers. Ultimately, Carthage was defeated in battle, and in turn, the war. As a result, they were forced to sign a harsh peace treaty with strict military restrictions. These included an absolute ban on the possession of war elephants.
That's funny.
Thus, the reign of the
That shows you they respected them, though.
Carthaginian elephants had officially come to an end. In reality, however, their story would not end here. War elephants had proven themselves possible of great achievements and would continue to see action in Mediterranean warfare for years to come. In fact, the Romans themselves would even adopt their own war elephants, many of which would come from the same North African herds.
Yeah, I mean, they did the same with the cavalry, too.
There will be much to discuss in the future, but for now we will conclude our episode. I hope you've enjoyed this closer look at one of the most feared units of...
So cool, right? Because they're... the thing is, though, I feel like a lot of this really drove them to extinction, this little subspecies in North Africa, amongst other things like, you know, just people just taking over the area. But yeah, like, I just cannot imagine, like, I've seen elephants in person, whether it be at a zoo or animal kingdom, but I just can't imagine, like, being on foot and seeing one run full speed at you in armor with people in the back. But there's not just one, there's 60 of them coming at you. I don't know how these people stood still. I would have froze. I guess that is standing still. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Bye-bye.